Hoş geldiniz efendim. Welcome to the spring, and our topic is tulip. But tulip cannot be told without gardens, so I will try to present you the Ottoman gardens first. Then we will go on with tulips. Değiştir. When I started working on Ottoman gardens, I really couldn't find any old Ottoman garden living. We have the Dolmabahce Palace, but since many years, I also myself witnessed that during the time I was going and visiting it, it changed. So in so many years, of course, it changed dramatically. And I remember in my youth, the lower part of the garden was called Tulip Garden, and they used to grow tulips there. Then suddenly they changed their minds, the officials, and they did not plant tulips anymore. So how can you trust? So you have to go to the historical sources. The historical sources you read, and also the visual historical sources, that means the miniature paintings. But when you look at the miniature paintings, you have to be careful. You have to know the language of miniatures. Otherwise, you cannot really understand it fully. But after looking at them for so many years, I think I understand a little bit, and so I will try to show you the aspects of Ottoman gardens with miniatures. On your left, you see here a miniature painting which is in a manuscript at the Topkapı Museum from the time of the conqueror, Mehmet II, conqueror of Istanbul, Mehmet II. So what we see there, a princely person sitting in a tiny little pavilion, and it is all covered with tiles. And in a garden, walled garden, we see the walls at two sides of this little pavilion, köşk we call it, garden köşk, bahçe köşkü, garden pavilion, and also musicians. I find this particular miniature very interesting because it shows the musicians. We have female musicians and men. Singer, here we have a singer and musicians here. And look at the women. They are all together. They are making music together. That is interesting. And look at the women. They are not covered like today. I find this also very interesting. And here we have another type of garden pavilion. As you can see, it is high. One has to climb up the stairs and enjoy the beauty of the garden and its view. Here we have also a water feature and a fountain. Here This is from the time of the son of the conqueror, Beyazıt II, and here we have a miniature painting showing Murat III in this late 16th century on a Bosphorus garden. What we see here, again here, is the sea, water, and also the cypress trees, and also a garden pavilion. Let's go. So, here we have Murat III sitting in the garden on a very plain stool, and here it is spring. The gardens are almost always shown in the springtime with the blossom trees, as you can see, and generally they are against the cypress trees, because the color, the cypress tree is, the color is very dark green, and with white blossoms or pink blossoms, they make a beautiful contrast. We see this feature in Persian miniatures as well as in Ottoman miniatures. So what else? You know, they are training birds here. And here we have another version, another garden depiction. And here we have cypress trees. The Sultan, Murat III, receives a news, a good news about the war in the east, and it is on the Bosphorus, at the seaside. Here is a garden pavilion, but he is sitting in a high patio. So, in all this, what we see, we always have a garden pavilion, big or small. Let's go. Now here, what we see in this garden, Murat III, is in Silivri garden, not very far from Istanbul. And look at the pavilion. It is more than a pavilion. It's a palace. And here we have these cypress trees represent the garden. And because it is on the seashore, the Sultan should not be seen by everybody. So we have a screen here, as you can see, so that he can enjoy the view of the sea, but he wouldn't be seen by other people. Here we have all these flower arrangements. This is a very popular flower arrangement by Ottomans. They put the vases in rows on the floor. It's quite interesting. Now let me tell you that there were two foundations in Edirne, that one of the aims was to put flowers between the rows of the prayers, between the rows of prayers, saf, during the Ramazan, all Ramazan, to smell. Can you imagine people praying in rows, and in front of them they have roses of flowers. And the other one is for another mosque that they had to plant flowers in the garden which is next to the Qibla wall, so that in the summer they opened up the windows and people would pray with the smell of beautiful flowers. You know, when you establish a foundation, you put your aims in it. And these were the two. Money was put in this foundation just to do these beauties. Okay, let's go. What else we have to understand the Ottoman gardens are another couple of miniature paintings. That is in 1582, for the festival, everybody came and showed their goods or productions or their skills. And here we have the gardeners. And what they do, they brought miniature garden models to the arena. And here we have 3 models, garden models, and in all of them we have cypress tree, as you can see. And in here we have a fountain, water feature, and in the other one also we have water feature, a fountain, and in here we have, it is florists really. We have cypress trees as well as the flowers and the fruits. Here we also see some flower beds. So they give us a pretty good idea how Ottoman gardens look like. Okay, let's go. In 1720, Ahmet III had his 3 sons circumcised, and for that occasion, sugar gardens were made. What you see in here, except these men, they are all made of sugar. The princes were so excited about the sight of this gardens that they begged their father, please let us have them in front of where they stayed, in front of us, so that we can look at them and enjoy the beauty. But unfortunately, it rained and everything was... In the miniature, we don't see that. Only the happy side.
No sugar woman.
No sugar woman, no. These men, as you can see how many men carry these 4 gardens, they really represent the Ottoman garden. We have water feature, it's a pool, and there's a boat in it, and garden pavilions, and flower beds, and we have the tulips. We have tulips all around here, and fruit trees, and so on. And in here, we also have I always find it difficult to see, yes, the cages, bird cages here. And these men are whistling to encourage the birds to sing. And we all, you know, when you look at all these individually, you see the water feature and all the different type of garden pavilions and so on, and all the fruits as well. Generally, you know, this sort of sugar images, sugar animals or whatever figures were given as gifts to the people, but in this case, you know, they were all destroyed. Okay, let's go. So when Mehmet II conquered Istanbul, it was near the arsenal that he had, he distributed the booties, or war booties, among the soldiers, and he also wanted to create a garden there. For this, for the garden, he had himself also, he planted 12,000 cypress trees in checkerboard order in here. And this garden was very popular all the years, I mean for centuries, and this is an late 18th century miniature painting. So I just wanted to show you, Topkapı Palace has got some little features of the past left, and here we have the cypress trees. They are very old. Some of them were fall down during some storms. Unfortunately, we lost them. What I suggested that they should plant new ones for the future, but they haven't done yet. Inshallah, one day they will listen to me and they will do it. Okay. Now, what about Tulip? When it comes, when we see Tulip, Tulip was always there, but it was not the flower, number one flower for centuries. Here you see a 13th century Selçukid tile, and you have a very, very primitively drawn tulip. So, from the historical sources, we know that all Asia, in Asia, in Iran, and in Anatolia, there were tulips all over. Let's go. But when it becomes a part of horticulture, that is what I want to talk about. This is a divan, this is an anthology of the poems of Selim, the son of the conqueror, Mehmet II. This manuscript is in the Istanbul University Library, and it is dated 1520, if I'm not wrong. I mean, maybe 1 year or earlier, or about around this time, before Süleyman the Magnificent is enthroned. So, it has got only 4 pages of miniatures, and this double page shows the Sultan sitting, and you know they are having a talk. Probably they are reading poems with the courtiers. What is interesting is here we have, unfortunately, I don't have a high resolution image for this. And if it is very high, then we have trouble with the machine. But please trust me that there are tiny little niches in these parts, and in every niche there is a vase and a flower. And among these flowers, here you have an enlargement detail, and we have, as you can see, we have tulips. There are flowers, but there are also, how many tulips? This we cannot see well, but many tulips we have here. So these are in Ottoman miniatures. These are the earliest tulip depictions. Okay. So in my book, I know this manuscript for ages, but these details I've forgotten. And in my book, I could not include these divan tulips in my book. But I started with this manuscript. This is Matrakçı. Matrakçı is a painter, also calligrapher, also mathematician, also very skilled in making paper castles. He is a man of many skills. He is a real Renaissance artist. And his most famous work is Menazilname, which tells us the story of the campaign starting from Istanbul to Iran and Iraq of Süleyman the Magnificent. He tells us where the Ottoman army encamped. So it starts with Istanbul, of course. They started from Istanbul, and the first miniature painting we have is Istanbul. And on one side, on this side, we have the old Istanbul, and on the other side, we have the Galata. This is Golden Horn, and this is the Bosphorus. In here, around the walls, behind the walls of Galata, this is a city, of course, as you know. In this part, there should be many gardens. And here I'm showing you some details. And when looking, in the last few weeks, I have been working on the manuscripts at the Istanbul University Library. And this I looked very carefully again. And I discovered that there were some, there is a tree, a cherry tree. I never saw the detail. It is, you know, you have to look at them so carefully. Every time you look, you discover something. And I was very happy. And when you look at the details carefully, you will see that there are some tulips as well, here, and also some carnations, as well as some other flowers. These flowers we cannot identify. This is also tulip, yellow tulip. In this case, Matrakçı shows us we can distinguish the flowers, most of them. The tulips we distinguish, the carnations, course, flowers and plants were always has been depicted, but you could not, because they were stylized, you could not recognize them. You couldn't tell which flower it was. For that reason, it is very important that we can recognize the tulip in here, you know, after that Selimi Divan of Selimi. You know, this is the first time we have these tulips depicted, and we can recognize them, and also the carnations. These flowers, for instance, you know, this type of flowers you find everywhere, but you cannot tell, you cannot name them. Okay, let's go. But during the time of Süleyman, who was very, very much interested in gardens, the horticulture, Ottoman horticulture, bloomed. He himself, we know from the historical sources, that he himself established 30 gardens in Istanbul and in around Istanbul, 30 gardens. And he also supported some artists that they created a new style in Ottoman art. And one of them was Karameni, called Karameni. This miniature, this manuscripts, these pages, the illuminations of them were made by Karamemi. Karamemi became the head painter, court head painter, and he created a new style. And this manuscript we have, the Ottoman sultans were always skilled in something. Some of them were skilled in engraving rings, stones. Some were very skilled in calligraphy. And most of them were poets as well. So this is the anthology of Süleyman the Magnificent's poems. He used, he did as a poet. Sorry? Yes. He used Muhibbi as a poet, and the name, his name, Muhibbi. And it is a smallish manuscript at this size, and about how many pages? It's quite thick. I can't remember the number of the pages, but every page is differently illuminated. There are similar motifs, but the arrangement of the motifs are always different. None of the pages is repeated in the manuscript. It's unbelievably beautiful. It is at the Istanbul University Library. Now, look at these flowers. These are violets, and these are tulips, and this is hollyhocks. And let us look at here. These are very stylized flowers. We cannot tell the name of these flowers, but here we have beautiful roses in here, and also we have tulips and roses seen from the top, from the side, and so on. Let's go. And here we have other hyacinths and carnations, and so on, and tulips. Tulips, he for this part of the illumination, he preferred to have tulips painted in gold, because he really valued them so much. Probably that was the reason. And here you have also the violets, and I'm sorry, the names cannot come. Okay, but this is the most important and most beautiful page. It is at the very last page of the manuscript, and here we have also irises. White irises were taken from Anatolia to Europe in the 14th century. This I learned from a publication, a Dutch publication, which is the symbol of Virgin Mary. Okay, and these are anemones, as you can see, and hyacinths. This is most beautiful. And here we have daffodils. Daffodils, if you ask me what are the most popular flowers of Ottomans, I can say the blossom tree, carnation, tulip, rose, hyacinth, have I told? Hyacinth, and also the daffodils. They are very, very much popular. And I found several manuscripts showing all the different kinds of daffodils. So, it is not really very well studied topic. Okay, let's go. Now, tulip. This is, some of them are called Istanbul tulip. They cultivated tulip in such a way that it was the most popular ones, the very elegant, very pointed ones. And these are two 16th century depiction of tulips. As you can see, they are really very elegant. In the 16th century, as Süleyman, before he was enthroned, he used to go to a garden. The garden where they could enjoy the beauty of the flowers and the plants, other plants. Also meet other people, talk about the flowers, how they cultivate and what they do and so on. Or bring their best flowers, talk about them, and also they had conversation on literature and other things. We know all about these. He also studied jewelry when, as a boy, when he was in Trabzon. He also learned how to make jewelry. Okay, let's go. Goldsmith. Here you have again two pages of Murat Surname, Murat III's Surname, which was made, as you know, in 1582. And here we have the florists florists also brought their fruits together as they sold the cut flowers together with fruits. And here a man brought a paper tulip, a beautiful paper tulip. In the text it says a red tulip, but I don't know why it's yellow in here, and it was admired greatly, but unfortunately this also was destroyed by rain. Okay, let's go. Here we have Ahmet III, and this is another flower arrangement. As you can see, tulips on a tray. In my youth, I gave several lectures in Holland, in New York, and in other places. The first thing on flowers. The first thing I asked the organizers to bring me some flowers, carnations and tulips, and also a silver tray. And I would carry some vases with me, bought from Paşa Bahçe. I still have them. I traveled with them.
Memories.
Yeah.
Memories.
And in there, before the lecture, I would put some vases with carnations in row, and on a tray, tulips I arranged. Because these are the Ottoman flower arrangements that I really wanted to show. But I think I'm getting old, maybe. That I haven't done this. But thanks to my guests, we have beautiful. Yeah, I should bring the vases. I store them. It's too many. Every single. Ottomans were very keen on putting flowers in the right type of vases. That was, not just in a vase, but in the proper type. Okay, let's go. Here, this is a page showing the parade of the guilds. And here, let me see first to show you. Yeah. This I'm showing you, yes, this detail, this part in here. You see the fruits and the flowers they take with them. Many years ago, two friends of mine came from Metropolitan Museum. They were visiting me in Istanbul. I kidnapped them to Bursa because I wanted, I asked a friend of mine from Bursa to let me know when there was a wedding party in one of the villages. And she did, and I kidnapped this friend of mine. It was so interesting. We stayed with my friend, and they enjoyed it enormously in the end. And we were taken to that village, and I saw there the group of groom, the party of the groom were carrying a tray with some food and some vases like these, full of flowers. So it's an old tradition. I just wanted to know if it was still alive or not. And it was alive. And I was so happy. Okay, let's go. So, the tulip became a part of life, life of the Ottomans. And here you see a beauty which belongs to a friend of mine, but it is antique. She is a collector. I should have invited her. Anyway, and my daughter also published this. It is really beautiful, and you have to find, such stone for this. And this is, what can you imagine this can be? This is for pressing. Yeah, pressing marble. It is from the 16th century. It is at the Topkapı Palace. It's a block of marble of this size, this thick. And you never expect to have all these beautiful flowers, the tulips. And this is a rose looking from the top. And here we have the roses as well in here. So how deeply it was in the Ottoman culture, I'm trying to show. So here we have Murat IV in a garden pavilion, and he has all the food on this tray, and the fruits and so on, and 3 vases. We have tulips, also carnations. It is beautifully arranged, as you can see here, and also some tulips all in here. And these are, he was very keen on banning alcohol, but he drank himself well. And as you can see, there are bottles in here. They are not glass bottles. Generally, they are ceramic bottles because it doesn't show inside. Okay, let's go. So I just wanted to show you the fruit room. In the harem of Topkapı, at the Topkapı in the harem, almost all the sultans constructed a room for themselves. Ahmet III constructed this room. It is a private room, but it is so tiny little room. It's called fruit room because, as I've told you, fruit and flowers are always together. And because there are fruits and flowers, it's called fruit room, but it is not, it should be called Ahmet III, room of Ahmet III. And it is beautifully adorned, especially with all the, in here, we have beautiful tulip paintings, as well as in his library on the ceiling. They are really beautiful. We don't have much time to show all these beauties. Okay, let's go. This is a book binding, and here we have a tulip garden, and this also proves us that it's the 16th century. It also proves that in Ottoman gardens there were flower beds. Okay, let's go. This is Kağıthane. Let's go. These are not Ah, this is a beauty at the Istanbul University Library. It's that big. And paper cut paradise garden, as you can see, 16th century. You can find every kind of flower in there, but you have to look very closely. I have better images of this, but you know.
Excuse me, is it paper cut?
Paper cut.
Oh, it's done but...
Yes, yes, yes. Color. And you see a little detail of it. You see the tulips, hyacinths, and also roses. These are all, you know, it is raised. It is not flat. It is made of many layers. These. Evet, katı. It's really amazing. Okay, let's
It's a
go.
technique from which it's not Japanese, no, it is a Ottoman.
It is Ottoman also in Iran. We have. I found these in Ankara, in vakıflar. And these are also really beautiful. Let's go. There are many. In Vienna we find, in the British Library we find. And yesterday evening I received 2 images from London. It shows kartı, and they consult me about the date of it. It is also beautiful, as far as I can see. This is a lacquer work book binding of 16th century, and you see all these beautiful tulips in here, and in here. This is later one, the book binding. Okay. And of course, you know, you cannot do without tiles, and there are so much. I think we don't need. Do you know what are these? Honeysuckles. They are honeysuckles. Of course, we have also tulips. We cannot do without tulips. Okay, let's go. Now, I'm thankful to Professor Tuna, who gave me this image. I had a regular tulip image in my PowerPoint, but that professor said, you know, this is not the right kind of tulip, so he sent me this image. This is the type of tulip which was exported from Turkey to Europe by Uzbek. So, you know, here you have the information about this adventure.
So the tulip originated farther east than in China?
Yes, yes, it is really Asian flower, but by the time it spread out. But the Western world, it was introduced. Probably it also, because you know you don't need to take the bulb and bring it. It can go, it can travel itself. Highly probably there were some in Europe as well, but they didn't know. So for the first time, the Western scholars saw them in Turkey, and it was Uzbek who took the bulbs to Europe. So it was the first time that it was introduced to Europe. Then it was cultivated, and you know, and this was followed by by other because the flora of Anatolia is so rich you know, there is a publication made in Scotland, 11, I think 11 volumes. In 11 volumes, it tells you the flora of Anatolia. It's amazingly rich. So after the export of tulip bulbs, they started, Uzbek and her followers started to export other bulbs and also species to Europe. And now I'm sure that you are all tired. I'm not going to talk about them, but just I will show you how much plants were sent from Turkey to Europe. And because I cannot keep the names, Latin names of the flowers, I just put the names in here, next to them. Okay, let's go. Yavaş yavaş böyle. Değiştir. Bu kadar. I couldn't find a better image of this.
No, it's prettier when it looks like.
Oh, I asked my granddaughter to photograph a beautiful. In fact, it is Gülübrişim. The Gülübrişim is also the name passed to the Western world as it is. She always promised I have done it, but from her camera it did not come into my computer. I'm sorry. Okay. And this is regular grape. Yes. And this is at kestanesi, horse chestnut. And I photographed this in Stockholm. Okay. And I photographed this lilacs in Vienna. Beautiful. Here you have the miniatures. Carnations.
May I ask you
Yes, please.
some small cute question?
Please.
This researcher from Europe once said to me that during the Turkish Empire, as you've been lecturing us today, those people during the Turkish Empire appreciated flowers so much that they created a vase for one carnation.
Yes.
The-
Yes. Yes.
Now, Pashivashi sells them crystal for one carnation.
Yes.
Vases.
Yes. I haven't told you because I don't want to make the lecture too long, but flowers were given as gifts on trays.
Oh,
You know, brides parade, for instance, they carry the bride's dowry and so on. And during this parade, they carry flowers on trays. And also, some bribes were given as flowers were given as bribes, more than money. They were more valuable than money. And one tulip costed in the 16th century, if the good one, more than 1,000 goals. So it was really crazy. And in the 16th century, unfortunately, we started, in the 18th century, sorry. In the 18th century, we started to import bulbs from Holland. That's an irony as well. I could not go into details. Thank you very much for your patience.